shadowy flight into the dangerous world of a man who does not exist. A young loner on a crusade to champion the cause of the innocent, the helpless, the powerless, in a world of criminals who operate above the law.
Hey, it's me, and welcome to Team HQ Trump Mafia. And I hope you're having a great weekend. You know, these people are always talking about how Trump is a threat to national security, but it's actually many of these swampers, Republicans and Democrats alike, that are actually a threat to our national security. We had such a massive intel failure when it comes to the Russian special operation in Ukraine. We were had by the Kiev feint, the Kharkov feint, the Odessa feint. We were not prepared for the Crimea blitz. And there's a lot of stuff that happened even in Afghanistan that you wonder how come we did not know about it. And one of the reasons that you have other countries like Russia and China being ahead of us is because these people are actually compromising our national security. And I'm talking about these swampers. And it's because of Trump derangement syndrome in many cases. I'll give you some examples, like if these swampers gossip with each other while they're both at the Pentagon, for example. This happens over secured phone lines. And that's one thing. But you have people like Esper, Defense Secretary, calling an ex-official who's out of the Pentagon, Gates, and gossiping about what Trump just said. And I can't believe you said that. What do you think? Yeah, I can't believe it. That's terrible. And they're doing so on unsecured phone lines because they're gossiping like friends. They're all friends. And it doesn't matter to them if somebody's in office or not. They see each other as all being swampers. And in many cases, ex-officials still have security clearances. So they feel like they can tell each other these things, but they don't realize that if they're doing so on unsecured phone lines, that Russia and China, of course, are listening. And that's why, in many cases, Russia and China get a heads up on a lot of stuff. And you know that these swampers are all anti-Trump. They have Trump derangement syndrome, even while they were pretending to be loyal and whatnot. You had people at the CIA, FBI, the Pentagon, the State Department, all making calls to their swamper friends on unsecured phone lines, and often giving the contents of what happened in a private meeting at the White House, or at the Pentagon, or even at the CIA. And so they're giving Russia and China valuable intel just by being stupid, by having Trump derangement syndrome and gossiping about Trump like little girls on unsecured phone lines. Yeah, nobody ever talks about that because it's not just a scandal. This really harms national security. So whenever these swampers are talking about Trump being a danger to national security, what they really mean is he's a danger to the security of the swamp and the corrupt system that they have built. In the same way, Democrats, whenever you hear them saying, democracy's in trouble, we got to save our democracy. They're not talking about democracy, they're fascists. They're talking about they have to save the Democrat Party. And it's the Democrat Party that is in trouble because they suck. But it's also the Republicans. You know, you have a lot of these people that have Trump derangement syndrome, and they were making these calls to even Democrats because behind the scenes they're all friends, they're all swampers. And so they have compromised national security, not just with Afghanistan and now the special operation of Russia in Ukraine, but you had some missions of the SEALs going bad. And we're talking about Yemen, we're talking about Afghanistan, of course. Remember that SEAL Team 6 plane that went down, and even had Rangers on board as well, all dead. Now, who was talking? Because if they can do that girly gossip to each other on unsecured phone lines about how bad Trump is, maybe, they're like friends, and they're so happy about some special forces mission that they're gossiping about it. Hey, we're going to do this. Did you know that? No, that's cool, man. Yeah, we're going to do it. Okay, thanks for letting me know. Yeah, we're friends after all, right? And guess what? You had people listening, and the information came out, and the plane got shot down. That's how easy it is for foreign intel to get information. It's not because they're super spies and they planted these people. They had spies in there for decades maybe, and it may be true in some cases, but there's a limit to that. But when you have all these swampers calling each other, gossiping with Trump derangement syndrome, or just gossiping about national security stuff on unsecured phone lines, or even in a restaurant and you don't know who's sitting next to you, and things happen because you have people listening. And Russians and Chinese people were not born yesterday. They understand that you have a lot of deranged swampers that put the swamp first and put their friendships and greed first, not the country. And you certainly see that nowadays. But you always hear these stories about all these so-called experts or defense officials or people at the State Department, and they were all gossiping with people outside of DC even, and people that were not in office, and a lot of that was confidential information. And then, of course, with the private email server that Hillary had, Barack Obama was also using it. They were also transmitting top secrets and classified information. And if you have a server that's in a bathroom somewhere, of course it was hacked. And all the information that went on that private email server, of course the Russians and the Chinese have it all. So how many things were mentioned there? Maybe they were talking about the sanctions, the whole sanctions action plan that they implemented now. Maybe they were talking about it even at that time after Crimea was taken, and that the Russians had a heads up, for years, right? Even 5 or 6 years, or even more. And that is because all of these swampers, they don't care about national security. And no better example than Eric Swalwell. I mean, the guy actually was with a Chinese woman spy, and he's still on all these intel committees, and he's like a main swamper there in the House on the left, or in the swamp, because in the swamp, really, there's no left-right. They're all swampers. And you just have a handful of people. The people that you can rely on in the House and the Senate, you can count them on 2 hands. Yeah. And we're talking about hundreds of people, but there's only a couple of good people there. The others are followers, or they have no power. And most of them just go along with the swamp and the corrupt system that they have built. But the national security threat does not come from Trump. It comes from them. They are so callous, reckless, and they don't even realize that because of Trump derangement syndrome and gossiping with each other, they may have killed many Americans, and they have hurt our nation to such an extent that right now, many things that are happening in many ways, it's a result of Trump derangement syndrome. Even everybody in the Biden regime, by reversing everything Trump did, they basically doomed our nation and sanctioned the USA. And a lot of that is just because of Trump derangement syndrome. We have to reverse whatever he did. But many of these things were even good, even if you're a Democrat, but because it was Trump, then they reverse it anyway. And look at the mess they created. And it's not only a mess, it's a disaster, really. And if it continues, our country can cease to exist. And I'm not even joking about it. But luckily midterms are coming. So of course, the monkeypox is coming. But you also have, the mail-in ballots, and you have other things that they're doing. And you have to wonder, Did they not learn from 2020 that if you mess with the will of the American people and you go against common sense, that you're dooming us all? And they don't seem to care. And they're more interested in saving Ukraine. And why is that? Isn't it suspicious how these people are so obsessed about Ukraine? Yeah, people in Washington, D.C. are so obsessed with Ukraine. You have to wonder why. And we know why. There was a system set up. I don't know what exactly it was, money laundering. Maybe they were getting all kinds of kickbacks. But something about Ukraine is so tied to all the Democrats and Republicans in D.C. that they defend it more than our own nation or even their home states. That is so suspicious, right? And does it have to do with human trafficking? Is that a part of it? I just don't know all the details. I do know that these people are all corrupt as hell. And so Trump derangement syndrome, yeah, it's real. And it also shows a kind of mental instability, emotional instability. And so considering that many of these top officials at the CIA, the Pentagon, the DOJ, State Department, that they all had Trump derangement syndrome, it simply means that they all had some kind of a mental illness, all of them. And some of them had it real bad. But even those with mild symptoms still endangered our national security because of Trump derangement syndrome. And of course, you know me, right? I have to dot the I on the Trump derangement syndrome, saying that it's also the media, everybody in DC, and even in the conservative media, so-called, including the socials. Tucker Carlson has TDS. Also, the Polish twins. Yeah, the Polish twins. Two Polish boys, Mike Cernovich and Jack Posobiec. They have Trump derangement syndrome because somehow when you're in the media and you have a lot of followers, you suddenly feel like you have power and you can disagree. And also you have to suck up to the left, the masters of the universe, so you don't get censored, shadow banned, or even deleted. That's their lifeline, the socials, right? And these people have the same talking points often as some of the TDSers in the swamp. And it's always about, I can't believe Trump's doing this. Why is he doing that? But the talking points are a little bit different, but the idea behind it is the same, that Trump cannot be trusted, that he makes many mistakes, that he's unreliable. And I'm sick of it. Even after seeing an entire term of Trump, these people still have TDS. And I think, therefore, that you can't really get rid of it. One thing is to be opposed to Trump in 2016 because you thought he was a completely different person, right? And then you were convinced by his term and you become a diehard Trump fan. That's different from people in the media on the conservative side being anti-Trump, TDS, and then pretending they're all pro-Trump just to get MAGA followers, right? To leech off of MAGA and President Trump. But they still have a TDS. It never changed. And they're in it for themselves, of course. Of course. And I call these people out all the time because they're going to be part of Operation Zulu, which is actually ongoing. But when there's an effort to disqualify Trump, maybe they'll be the ones pushing for DeSantis or somebody else. And I see it coming from 10,000 miles away. And that's why I keep on giving you guys a heads up. And you can trust whoever you want. I don't trust anyone. I judge by actions. And so some of these people that I criticize, of course they say good things when it comes to fighting against the left or whatever the issue may be. And, I don't hate anyone, but you have to understand that this is a pro-Trump channel because in my view, all of these other people, even DeSantis, they don't have the strength of President Trump to navigate the swamp or even to know how to do it because everyone in D.C. is infected. Everyone in D.C. is a swamper. even the so-called good guys. They're swampers. And so you think some people are good, they're going to do good, they don't do good. And they choose a swamp in the end. And you saw that with many people that had a lot of potential. Now, I was used to champion some people that are swampers, but you think they're going to go with the times and, really do something for America first and for the American people. In the end, they were too weak or compromised, or they just chose a swamp. But the problem is people with TDS blame Trump for that. They blame Trump for going with this person or that person. When you become president, you have to work with swampers. And you just hope that you can either lead swampers to do the right thing and not to betray the nation. And often they don't listen. Or like I said earlier, they will listen and jump, but they don't jump very high. And then they're making girly gossip phone calls to ex-officials. Some of them are Democrats, giving the DNC a heads up, but also giving Russia and China and other countries a heads up, compromising our national security. And that's why I always tell you, people in the media, and that includes conservatives in the media, and these websites, and of course, everyone in DC, they're all stupid people. They're all corrupt people. And there's something wrong with that. We have God's nation on earth, and we don't have the best of the best leading our nation or even leading us in the media. We have secondhand people. We have stupid people. And we have people that are mentally unwell. Because it doesn't matter to me if you're a hardcore swamper in DC in the Democrat Party, or you're some conservative Twitter star that has TDS. The mental illness is the same.